Hi again, this is Mike Graese, the City Manager of the great city of Ashland, Kentucky. Great to be back with the Canopy143 project again to talk about this month's topic of courage. I think I shared with you before that I was a soldier for the large percentage of my adult life, and the U.S. Army has 7 Army values, and one of those is courage. It's actually called, they state it as personal courage. And their definition of personal courage is facing fear, danger, or adversity, both physical and moral. And I was able to watch some of the other videos from some of the folks that participate in this project, and there was a lot of focus on physical courage or discussions about what physical courage looks like. Example of somebody running into a burning building to save somebody. And when most people think about physical courage, or at least myself, I think about those type of people that are in those professions: police, firefighters, and service members. And when you think about that, you think about how courageous those folks are for going into those professions, because statistically speaking, they will face physically dangerous situations more often than most people do. And so when you think about it, you think, well, how do they deal with that? They don't just sit around and wait for a situation that could be very fearful or dangerous and just hope for the best. They spend a lot of time training for those situations. And they try to make as realistic conditions to train with those situations. Firefighters train in environments that have fake fire, but it's very realistic, it's hot, and it's dark. And they do those things so that if they ever have to be put in that situation, they'll succeed and hopefully come through it successfully. And when you think about those organizations, the term veteran is somebody that's been doing it longer than somebody who's brand new. And people in those type of service organizations, the firefighters, law enforcement, and the military, veterans are thought of very highly because they do have that experience. So keep that in mind about training for situations. The next one is moral courage. And moral courage to me is doing the right thing at the right time. Kind of a subcomponent of that is discipline, which I've always loved the definition of discipline is doing the right thing when nobody's looking. But I think when we're having the conversation about courage, part of the fear of reacting in a moral situation is that there may be other people around, and that has an impact. That does create a certain level of fear. Again, I watched some of those other conversations that people had, and they use an example of bullying. Bullying has always been around. I'm so glad that our society has recognized that and are bringing it to light to try to put an end to bullying, because it's not good. And so, again, some other folks have talked about that. There's another thing that's very destructive, and that's gossip. And gossip just really tears people down. It makes people feel rotten. And when you think about a situation like gossip, I go back to the example of first responders. How do you train for a situation like that? And how do you become the person that you want to be, a courageous person? You're not going to jump in, or most people won't jump in and do the perfect thing they want to do at the right time. But you can kind of train yourself. And there's different levels of how do you respond to gossip. At the very minimum, you could just say nothing when you hear gossip going on, and you don't have to add fuel to the fire. The next level of something you could do, you could walk away from it. Imagine that when somebody's gossiping and you know it's gossip, and you just turn your back and walk away. That sends a very powerful message to the person that's doing the gossiping. You could also confront the person and ask them, would you say this about that person if they were standing here right now? And if they'd say no, then you could just say, I don't want to be part of this. And that's a very courageous thing to do. And it's a courageous thing for adults. It's a courageous thing for kids. Gossip goes on at every level of life. Another term that I like when talking about moral courage is something the chief of police in Ashland uses, is courageous conversations. And many times in life, you're going to be faced with difficult circumstances that the best thing to do is confronting somebody one-on-one and talking to them. Publicly confronting somebody or surprising them without notice, that's not courage. That's cowardice. And so when you stumble on, or if you come on these situations in life, I strongly encourage you, go directly to the person and have a conversation with them. You're going to find it's a courageous thing to do, and you'll find 95% of the time there's so many misunderstandings that get blown out of proportion. So to me, that's a good example of courage. I'll leave you with one final thing, and that is, I had a Sunday school teacher about 10 years ago that he said something to me that was just off the cuff. He said, whatever you fear the most indicates what has the most power over you in this life. So I ask you to think reflectively today. Think about what causes you the most fear. Think about strategies for how you're going to deal with that, because you all are very young age-wise in life, and the things that you do now to face courage will be the way that you will set a pattern for how you deal with it the rest of your life. Thanks so much for this opportunity to Canopy 143 Project, and I hope you all have an amazing day.